headliner, which is around Ubisoft and the Skull and Bones game, and then also just how Ubisoft's going. So I was just wondering, Swinny, as the mega Ubisoft fan among us, did you want to cover this?
I'm happy to cover it, but I wouldn't call myself a mega Ubisoft fan. I'm a mega
apart from
Assassin's
playing
Creed
every
fan.
single Assassin's Creed game, including mobile games.
But that's
and you've played other Ubisoft games. Come on.
I don't not into many of their other franchises.
All right,
so you're misrepresenting me.
I never misrepresent you.
Yeah, so basically with Skull and Bones, so as part of their latest earnings call, Ubisoft confirmed that the game, which is like a shared world pirate game that got announced at E3 2017, so nearly 4 years ago, is now expected to release in the 2022 to 2023 financial year. And based on the history of this game, I honestly wouldn't expect it till 2023. So the last actual gameplay was seen of this game is back in June 2018, and it was a pretty big chunk. They gave us like 25-minute look at it, and it's definitely, as we'd expect when they first announced it 4 years ago, definitely built on the ship combat Assassin's Creed series, but then expanded way, way more to be essentially like a live service game with a big focus on co-op. So one thing that I've always been interested in, I'm not certainly the only person to think about this, is wave physics and how that would work in like a shared world game. Because we've seen it, games like Crackdown 3, their multiplayer was like cloud-based. So that meant that like the debris and destruction was, calculated on by the cloud. So that means that everyone could see the same stuff. But I wonder, I don't think this is the reason why this game's been delayed so long, but how do you think they're going to handle the actual like wave part of it for different people? Do you reckon it'll be cloud-based?
Interesting thought.
Because I mean that's pretty significant, because it's like it completely changes how your ship is controlled.
But is that what they're saying, that the waves are kind of universal?
Well, I don't know. That's what I was wondering. If anyone, if you guys hadn't heard that, how you think you'd actually tackle that? Because it'd be tricky.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting because they'd have to be in sync, wouldn't they? Because the height and the physical location of the ship would be different based on the waves, you'd think.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's really fascinating. Didn't even think of that.
Anyway, this game is, it's at this point I'm surprised that it's still a thing, but it seems like they've obviously sunk a lot of money into this already, so for them to just cancel it outright is probably not going to make sense. But I don't know. Like, it's this game, like Ubisoft generally, unless there's stuff we don't hear about, they're pretty solid with actually bringing their games out.
They're like one of the most reliable studios. Like if you're an investor and you wanted to invest, they're probably one of the studios that do make a lot of sense, because they're pretty stable, right? Like there's not a lot of ups and downs. They always seem to release at least a couple of AAA games per year, if not 3, and they seem to get, decent reviews. It's not like Last of Us territory stuff, but they're pretty reliable. I mean, this is the first game from the studio, right? Like the actual internal studio.
So I think it's from the Singapore studio. I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if that studio has, because a lot of what happens in Assassin's Creed games, they'll sometimes get a whole bunch of studios to do smaller pieces of the games. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've done support work on other titles, but this may be the first one they're heading up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, like they definitely would have done support work. It's hard to see because I'm just looking at their Wikipedia. It doesn't list them as a co-developer, but it does seem for a long time. Like if you look at it, it's like Odyssey, Origin, Syndicate, Rogue, Unity. They weren't the maker of those games. So and that's a long period of time. So it's pretty tough jumping from that to, your own full game, as you've seen through things like, Days Gone and other games where they've had free reign on a new IP.
Yeah, and this leads into the next, headline from Ubisoft. Honestly, at this point, I'm surprised that this game isn't going to be free to play, because I always thought that they could go with that model if they're going for live service. But as part of what they kind of announced this week, so what they're actually doing, Ubisoft are pivoting to a blend of AAA and free to play releases for their franchises going forward. So the news comes after last week's announcement of The Division Heartland. So that's a new free-to-play release in the Division series, which is quietly actually quite popular. The Division, I know it is a AAA release, but you don't hear people talking about it all the time. But it generally sells really well, has decent player bases, especially number 2, from the sounds of it. And they cited Call of Duty as an example of the kind of model they're going with. So they have their main Call of Duty releases, which are, full priced retail games, complemented by a free-to-play, addition to the series, which is Warzone.
Yep.
So I think if you're going to if you want to play in the free-to-play space even more, I think that's a way to do it when you're one of these big AAA publishers, is to kind of, use the strength of your franchises to create these, I wouldn't say smaller, but these side experiences that are free to play.
Yeah, and apart from Nintendo, you almost need to park Nintendo in these kind of conversations. But this, Call of Duty are definitely doing it, but, everyone's moving in this direction. Like you see it with Halo Infinite, right? Like they're talking about, even on PC, you'll be able to just install the multiplayer component and play it. Like it's pretty bonkers stuff. Like, and it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of kids out there, there's a lot of people, and I hear more and more just people who have traditionally bought a lot of games are just going, oh, I just install it, it's free, might as well try it. And then they just get hooked in the ecosystem, right? And if their friends are there, and then they get battle passes and all this kind of stuff, and all this stuff really makes a lot of sense. I think, and just to touch on what you said, Swinny, and I don't think it's wrong, but it's one of those, how is Ubisoft going to go about this? And I see a lot of people having varying views in the industry, and even some people getting into a few fights about it. But, is this their AAA offerings are pretty much going to stay as they are right now, and they're increasing and amplifying the free-to-play elements of it's, an additive kind of perspective, or is this going to take away from their AAA output over time?
So I'm just trying to understand what you said. I said wrong there out of that, because we hadn't got to the point yet that Ubisoft, after this news came out, Ubisoft, and obviously it's PR, and a lot of PR is half bullshit, but
yeah.
that they basically clarified doesn't mean they're reducing their AAA output.
Yeah.
So their statement was, we are excited to be investing more in free-to-play experiences. However, we want to clarify that this does not mean reducing our AAA offering. Our aim is to continue to deliver premium experiences to players such as Far Cry 6, Rainbow Six Quarantine, Rise Republic, and Skull and Bones, to name a few, while expanding our free-to-play portfolio. That's why I mentioned Skull and Bones before, because while it's not an established franchise, it's had enough interest over the years that, to me, it's strange that they wouldn't actually make that a free-to-play.
It's such
they've clarified here that, that is a premium experience.
Yeah, they did bucket into the premium experience bit, but it feels like such a perfect title for free to play almost. I'd hate to see it as that, but when you think about all the cosmetics that you can apply to your ship, the things the flags you can put up, the sails, all that kind of stuff, the different types of sails, the different bells and whistles you can put on your ship, the ramming devices and all sorts of stuff. I don't know what they're called. You could see how they could make it a free to play title, but at the same time, I can see how it'll become a AAA title, and then they would put all those elements, and you'd have to have some sort of in-game currency to purchase all that stuff. So, either way,
they've never done that before.
Yeah, exactly. They've never done that before.
Franchises.
So either way would work, but yeah.
One thing though, I don't think this game necessarily appeals to kids as much as like the Fortnites of the world. And I think FIFA has demonstrated that you can effectively make a free-to-play game and then charge, $60 probably $70 next year for it, and then have every single other element of a free-to-play game in it and make even more money. And I've Ubisoft, I think they're more than happy to do that. And I think that's probably what their calculus is, that they view it as, no, they can still make money off this. And you know what, as well? I think Ubisoft has so many runs on the board that charging $60 for this game, or maybe they'll charge $40, a lot of people will just buy it because it's Ubisoft, and they'll probably break even because of that. But if it's a flop, at least they've got some of that money back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if they go free to play and people try it and they go, this game sucks, It's like, oh, okay. Well, they've just dusted all their money on this new studio. Well, not new studio, but throwing a new IP to the
And-
studio. So
And look, they could if the idea of this game being live service, they could always 2 years down the line transition it to free to play anyway.
But just quickly, Sweeney, like, do you think that this is going to hurt their AAA output? I mean, they're saying it won't, but that doesn't mean jack.
I don't think it will.
Okay,
No.
interesting. I think it will.
Yeah.
I think it will. I think they haven't done much in this kind of space as much as they could, and other major publishers are doing. And I think inevitably that just will soak up resources because it makes more money.
Yeah, but they expand like anything.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
just look at the amount of studios they've got. So all they need
Yeah.
to do is just expand more to be able to cover that.
Yeah, I know, but like that's just not how money works, right? If money seeks what's the most profitable, so even with that, they'll expand to make more free to play rather than AAA, in my view. But we'll see how it plays out. All right, let's jump into the next